Is that better? They got really dark.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. Thank you for staying with us. We are having some technical difficulties. As you can probably tell, Fran is joining us from a mystery location today. I will leave it up to her as to whether or not she tells you where she is. So thank you for joining us. We know that you have lots of options, like thousands, literally, of what you could be watching on the internet right now. So we so very much appreciate you joining us. Please let us know if you're watching live, so #live, or if you're watching it in the replay, #replay. If you are watching from the Facebook group, No Limits, Changing the World's Perspective of Special Needs Through IEPs, make sure that you give StreamYard permission to post your profile picture and your name. That is their way of honoring you and your privacy, since it is a private group. Otherwise, if you post from there, it just shows up Facebook user every single time you post. So even if you tell us the first time who you are, the next time you post, it's still just going to say Facebook user. And anybody else that posts it says Facebook user. So we still won't know who it is. So, Fran, how are you?
Well, I have been better.
Yeah?
I have been worse.
Okay.
I am not where I normally am.
Right.
And so that led me to this.
Okay.
How do we care for our loved ones when we can't care for them ourselves?
That's an excellent question. I don't know.
Especially when society expects us to care, you know?
Right. And yeah, I mean, I think about your situation and I think about my situation. And, you know, in my situation, if I was going through what you were going through right now, I really wouldn't have to worry about my daughter and where she is or who's taking care of her, because she would be able to do that herself. You don't have that option.
No, I don't. But it's kind of funny. In the whole grand scheme of things, God's already prepared this for such a time as this. When I had my stroke, I had always believed that my son would live with me for the rest of his life, and I would be able to care for him and provide for all his needs. And my daughter could always live with me, but I always thought, oh, she'll probably move on. But I just, I thought that's what would happen.
Right.
Well, I couldn't care for him safely, so he now resides in a CILA, which is a community integrated living arrangement. And my daughter lives at home. But I'm not at home right now. Can you tell?
I can tell. Well, I have insider information. I know exactly where you are, but not everybody does. They just know you're not at home.
I haven't been home for quite a while, for almost all of this church day to church day. So I wasn't able to care for my daughter. And so I had to figure that one out. But thankfully, I do have family close. But it led me to it led me down this slope of, what do we do when we don't have family or friends that we can trust with our loved ones? What do we do? How do we ensure that our loved ones are cared for if we cease to exist? Because no one knows when they're going to cease to exist.
Exactly.
So that brought me to today's topic.
Yeah. And thank you, Mom. Hi, Mom. She says hi to both of you. She joined us, and I've taught her now how to give permission. So now we know who she is when she comments from the group. So yeah, my interview.
But I lost your picture.
You lost whose picture?
You. There you are.
Oh.
I don't know. Somehow when I went to chat, you disappeared.
Oh, I don't know.
I don't know.
Well, Well, the person that I interviewed on hashtag No Limits for this last episode, her parents took care of her brother until he passed away at the age of 37. Hi, Alex. And this was at the time when it really was expected. Her brother had polio. Actually, the main part of his illness came from post-polio encephalitis, and I should say the main part of his illness, the main part of his ability level dropping. And so this was in the 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s. And so at that time, you weren't expected at all to keep your children at home if they had that severe of needs. But her parents chose to do that. And they had to take care of him. Even when they had to find people that they could trust. I think about single parents who, as you mentioned, might not have family around. And even if they have family around, that doesn't automatically mean that you trust them enough.
Correct.
Or that they feel comfortable enough to step into your shoes when it's necessary.
Right. You're correct. So that is and I wouldn't call it a burden, but it is something that is heavy on the minds of those who have individuals in their lives that require that extra.
Right.
I know that, and I mean, I'm really blessed in that my daughter can relatively be okay, but I couldn't leave her for extended times, and she's not staying alone because it's not the wisest choice.
Right. Yeah. And this was not a planned absence on your part. The preparations that you would do if you knew you were going to be gone this amount of days, there would be preparations. There were no preparations for this because it was unexpected.
Yes.
So that also must, play into the dynamics.
And it does. And the one thing I've discovered through this whole process.
What?
Well, I've discovered quite a few things, actually. It's been really eye-opening because it's a totally different thing for me because, yes, I didn't have time for preparation, but I also have come to realize that I have to just trust God to take care of the details. And that in order for me to be able to care for my loved ones, for my daughter and my son, I have to be able to not focus on them and focus on myself so that I can be there to care for them.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. And in a way, you did prepare for this because of what happened to you when you had your concussions and your stroke, because you were forced then to kind of make the preparations if something like that ever happened again. So having it wasn't necessarily forethought because you didn't plan until you had to. So
right.
But you learned.
Oops, I lost you.
Oh, well, we still see you, but you did freeze for a second.
Okay, there. Okay.
But you did learn how important it is to have people in place and to put that trust in God that He's still protecting your children, even if maybe the person that's taking over for you at the time wouldn't have if they hadn't been forced to. or that you would have chosen in a different setting, but your children were okay.
Yes.
So you had to, I would think, expand your faith and your trust in him, but also in these other humans around you that were helping you.
Yes. It's a matter of you really hope there's good in people.
Right.
That you think there's good in people, but you don't always know people. And for me, it's a matter of just personally, I've just had to say, okay, God, I know that you have a plan for me. You have a plan for my daughter. You have a plan for my son. And I'm just going to trust it, and you're going to work out the details.
Right.
Because if I continue to worry about those details, I'm not going to be able to focus on me so that I can be there for them.
Right. As long as possible. Yeah.
Yeah, right. And because no one knows how long we're going to be around, you know.
Right.
So.
And I hope that the people that are watching, who maybe are watching and they don't have a child with special needs, let alone 2 children with special needs, are really grasping the depth of why it isn't just easy for someone else to take your child. You know, if I had to suddenly go away, even when Violet was young, I did. When my dad was diagnosed and passed away of cancer 10 years ago, I had to ask somebody that I didn't know really well to pick her up from school. I mean, I knew them, but it wasn't like I knew them for a long time, or that I had spent a lot of time with them in the short amount of time that I knew them. But I could trust that she would be okay. And that if she wasn't okay, she would let me know when I picked her up. You don't always have that. And other parents don't always have that, because sometimes the children are completely nonverbal. And sometimes the child is verbal, but not always easily understood. Other times the child, even if these are grown-up children, they may not understand what has happened in order to tell you if it was wrong.
Right. And you know what I'm coming to realize through this whole process, and also I've discovered there's a gazillion and then some Facebook groups for parents of children with special needs and parents of adult children with special needs and specific special needs, that, and it's
right.
exponential. But outside of that group, and even within that group, there's not a lot of grace.
Really?
Yeah.
I would have thought within the group, I get with outside the group, but within, I would have thought you would have had more grace.
And people don't understand that it's not that simple. You can't just hire a babysitter to take a break. And
right.
And we've talked on that subject many times. How can you get a break when you have no one else? And literally, your child ends up in the bathroom with you, so you never have a break. So right. Finding those little ways. So in these extreme situations when there is no way. I remember when I had fallen and gotten a couple of concussions, and I couldn't go home, and there was no place for my son, and it was very scary trying to figure all the details out rapidly to find a home, because I was going to forego my health and I was going to go home. But then I wasn't allowed to go home. It was a mess. And
right.
But society, we're like, well, he's your son. You have to take care of him. So figure it out. Go home.
Yeah. As if that's just easily done.
Yes.
And we have a few Scillas in our area, but just because they're available as a physical location doesn't mean they're available for space inside. There's waiting lists sometimes, and there are criteria, right?
And
that have to be met.
The criteria and the funding. I mean, even if you could pay out of pocket, sometimes you have to have funding from the state. You're not allowed to just pay out of pocket. It's different. You have to, there's waiting. Yeah. It's not a matter of, oh, well, I'm just going to pay out of pocket and to place my child there. No, there's like a whole process. I had to get emergency placement for him to get it. He had been on this list since he was little and still was waiting for the funding. The only reason he got the funding was because it was an emergency placement.
Wow. Is that our the puns list? Is that the list that you're talking about?
Yes.
Okay.
Which is a mess.
Yeah.
And most people don't even know about the puns list in the state in which we live.
Right. And it's not called that, or it's not accessible in every state. And I forget exactly what the letters stand for, but basically, and tell me if I'm wrong, because this isn't really something that I dealt with as a special education teacher. I just know that some of my families would talk about that their child was on this list. It's basically a registry of people who have a need, a special need, and it's sort of a lottery as to if you'll get the funding for what you need. And in the 25 plus years that I've been involved in special education in Illinois, I've never known anyone who actually received the funding, except now your son, but that was in an emergency situation. But you have to stay on the list, even though it's not likely that you're going to get the funding, for you to even be eligible to step in the door to some programs at certain ages. Is that right?
Yeah. So I'm trying to think. Sorry, I have a foggy brain.
No, you're fine.
So yeah, the list, it's a lottery, and there's, can you see my fingers? There's this many levels within that lottery. There's planning, critical, and emergency. So each time there's funding available, they draw so many from each of those categories.
Oh, there we go. Okay, you had frozen for a second.
Oh, sorry. So they draw from each of the levels.
Okay.
Yes. And you never know when there's going to be funding, and you never know to what degree. Because I do know some people that have gotten the funding, and some people I know got funding while their children were still in elementary school.
Wow.
And sometimes it was hard not to be a little jealous.
Well, sure.
But I was glad for them. But it's like, how are we, because there's so many just different boxes. So your ratings and your needs, and it's just a mess that there's no rhyme or reason in some ways how people get that funding, even when they're on the list.
And that's the little bit of research that I did into that since leaving teaching and doing the education consulting and trying to help families, in all areas now. That was my research as well, that there doesn't seem to be, okay, if you do this, this, and this, that's going to elevate you and that's going to help. And hi, Violet, by the way. Violet just joined us.
Hey, Violet.
And so, yeah, I don't know if that's just our state. Or
I don't know
if that's the same way that programs are for people with special needs in other states. I mean, I know funding in our state for almost anything is a mess. So I would hope that there are other states who are doing it better.
And that's okay. So you're even hoping other states in these Facebook groups, you'll see a post every now and then. It'll be a desperate parent going, I am so desperate for services for my child. Please tell me what states I might have a chance of getting it for my child, because I need them now because I need help.
Right.
And so they're literally going to move to a state hoping they can get services. They will uproot their whole family just so they can get services.
Yeah. Yeah. And I have heard that. And I have seen that happen several times, especially now with the more groups that I'm getting involved with. I have actually known of families who've said, nope, this state just doesn't do anything for my child, and my child needs certain things. And so they will, you know, and that is not, I mean, don't get me wrong, thought of moving out of Illinois. And if we ever do move, it will be out of Illinois. But I'm not moving because my child had such strong needs that weren't being provided for where I was. I would move for a whole lot of other reasons. But that saddens me. And it's not even, at least the families that I have spoken to about this, it's not even that they're in extremely rural settings. I mean, some of these people are in, you know, big states with lots of big cities, and they're right in those big cities, and still nothing is happening. And I don't, you know, we have several federal laws that guarantee money, but nobody seems to have the money outside of it being guaranteed.
Yeah. I am finding, not just with that, but with the other, you know, my other project that on which I'm working, it's amazing. There's the money, but somewhere in between federal to state, the money just magically disappears.
Yeah.
Or who gets to control it and say the waters get very muddied.
Yeah. Yep. I agree. And I so often am amazed when people do find the money, because it almost is like magic. Like I think, well, what boxes did you check? What doors did you knock on that nobody else seems to be able to find or knock on? Because I do. There's so often I'm like, oh my gosh, look at all this money that this project received. Where did all of that money come from? Or look at, you know, this family that was able to get what they needed to get for their child.
Right. Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, there's gotta love formulas, because that's always the thing that I hear. Well, we have a formula, we have an algorithm, and
right.
Okay, bye, Mom. Tell Uncle Bob hi.
Bye.
She said she has to go because her brother's on the phone.
Okay, I'm going to try to set this down. Does that work?
Yeah.
Or is it too dark?
No, we can see you.
Okay.
I mean, you're a little dark on the one side, like you don't really have light on the one side of your face, but the other side we can see you.
Okay. Sorry.
We still know who you are.
Okay. So we're going to go with it for now.
Yeah. Make yourself as comfortable as possible.
It's getting heavy.
Yeah. So I don't know what the algorithm is, what the formula is, what the right doors to knock on are, because if I did, I would be helping a whole lot more people.
Right. Okay. So we don't know what the algorithm is. We don't know the solution. So what can we do, and how can we encourage others now?
Well,
what can we do as a society? What can we do as people who know people raising children who have special needs? What can we do to help?
I don't think there's a single answer, but if there would be, I would say be aware of the fact that other people have needs that you might be able to help fill.
Okay. And
you know,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that, we can't always monetarily help, but, maybe we can fix extra food, or we can offer to come and sit, and not at a time when it's an emergency, but at a time when you just want to let the parent have a break, so that if it doesn't go well, the parent isn't far away.
Right.
Because in an emergency, it's not likely that they're going to be able to quickly come back. So, just a Friday afternoon or a Wednesday night or whatever, say, hey, do you want to take an hour? I'd like to come over and give you a break. And continuing to bring awareness to the fact that isn't readily available, and why it's not readily available.
Yeah.
Doing things like this to bring awareness, to bring perspective, to bring exposure. My Tuesday show, the hashtag No Limits, letting people know.
Okay. There you are.
Oh, did we get frozen again?
Somehow I was spinning. I lost connection.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So I missed what you had said. I'm sorry.
That's okay. No, I was saying, like my hashtag No Limits show, just bringing the exposure to reaching out, to helping other people see, my book, Those Who Can't Teach, reading those kinds of stories to learn that every parent wants to be included, and even more wants their child to be included. Asking, do you want to come over, instead of assuming they don't, or asking, I would really like to get to know your family, but I'm a little scared. I don't know. I feel like I don't know everything I could know or should know. Can you tell me, is there anything special that I need to do or to plan or to know? You're that parent. I'm the we're going to say lay person. I
know that one of the biggest things, and it's not even just anybody in general. So often we'll say, let me know if you need help.
Right.
And that is so open-ended. And a lot of times we won't take it up because we don't, either our pride gets in the way, or we don't know what we need, or we're not really sure what you mean when you say, let me know when you need help. So instead, you can say to somebody, hey, I'd like to make supper for you. Could you tell me some of the things you guys like to eat, so I make sure I make something that you would like? Or I'm running to the grocery store. Could I have your grocery list and I'll pick up your stuff? Being very specific in how you're willing to help, because that gives the person you're saying, I'm going to help, I'm here to help, gives them an idea of, oh, they really are, and they're very willing to go get my groceries. Okay, I understand. So when I have a grocery need, and that even goes for when someone's sick, or so often someone's had surgery, they come home and you say, just let me know if you need some. Well, that's kind of vaguish.
Yeah.
And with that comes not really a big commitment, because you're not committing to anything either.
That's true.
You're putting the burden on the person that needs the help, and they're already trying to figure out a gazillion other things, so they're not going to remember. And
Right.
sometimes even checking back and saying, hey, and being very specific, I am at this grocery store. I know you normally like this kind of stuff. Would you like, I'm picking some up, or may I pick some up for you?
Right.
So
Yeah.
I think for me, I've found that when someone's very specific, I'm more likely to ask for their assistance than when they say, hey, just reach out if you need some. Right. Sure. Yeah.
Right.
Cricket.
Yeah. And that actually, as a teacher, I used to say, do you have any questions, after I would present a lesson? And maybe I'd get a question, but most of the time I wouldn't. I was at a workshop, and we were told at this workshop, change the way that you say that. Instead of saying, do you have any questions, say, what questions do you have for me? The mind then goes, oh, they've asked me to do something. So instead of saying, call me if you need something, how can I help you? Like, even if you think about it, like when you go into a store and if you're greeted by somebody and they say, can I help you? You're like, no, I'm fine. But if they come up to you and say, how can I help you today? Even if you say, I'm good, I don't need any help, it really does something. It triggers something in your brain to think about if you need to respond or not, and how you need to respond.
Right.
So even the wording of it, Alex hasn't said balance yet, but she did say that's what she was going to say. By doing these type of message videos, whatever, to inform others that they are not alone and there are some resources out there, and by being there for each other. Yeah. Thanks, Alex. So that would be, a couple of ways. And like you said, like, I actually had a neighbor do that recently. They were going to a store that's in a different town. And they called up and said, hey, we're going to the store. Do you guys need anything from this specific store? We didn't need anything, but that really touched me that she would reach out, and because she knew that we liked to go to that store too. And so, yeah, I mean, so that's another piece of it, is you have to kind of know the person a little bit. But even if you don't, even if they're just your neighbor that just moved in, and then they had a baby right after, what kind of diapers do you use? I'm going to the grocery store. What do you need from the store? Because when you have a newborn or you have children, you always need something.
Right.
When you have little children, you always need something.
Yes, you are correct.
And sometimes, even like you said, asking, hey, I'm going to the grocery store. What can I pick up for you? That would free them up to do something else that maybe they didn't even know that they would need you to go to the grocery store for them. And in today's world, if the concern is, okay, I'm going to the grocery store, I can barely afford my own stuff, I can't afford somebody else's and then have them pay me back. There's so many places where you can say, hey, if you place your order, call it in online, however you do that, I'll pick it up for you so you don't have to run to the store.
Yeah. And I've actually was able to do that a few times, and it was so handy. And someone did. They were like, well, I'm already running this way. So if you get your order in, just let me know.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to think. My brain's spinning in like a gazillion directions. I've lots of chipmunks. Sorry.
That's okay.
I'm just trying to be real. So we started this with how do we care for our loved ones when we can't?
Mhm.
Well, we have to admit that we need help. And sometimes our pride gets in the way. I know mine does. Not as much anymore. It's something, but way back when I had my stroke, that was like one of my biggest hurdles was pride.
Right.
And I can do it myself attitude, which got me in a lot of trouble physically because I ended up crawling because I could do it myself while
Right.
there was someone literally standing there beside me that could have done it. But because I was gonna do it myself,
Right.
I ended up on the floor, you know? So I think because we've been hurt so many times and had to do it ourselves so many times as parents of kiddos who happen to have different needs, we don't even know how to let that go our guard down, or to or even realize that sometimes it's a pride thing. And so you have to humble yourself sometimes and be okay with asking for help. And it doesn't mean you're weak when you're asking for help. And I think, and when we've shared that many, many, many times, that asking for help is not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of knowing your abilities and knowing the areas where that's not your strength, because you have strengths in so many other areas. That's an area you may have a weakness. So it's okay to have help.
Yeah. And even if it is in a strength area, you know, Major League Baseball players still get help with their swinging and their catching and their pitching and their everything, you know. Mm-hmm. So even, and I happen to pick baseball because that's just the one that I know the best, but I mean, that happens, you know, for everybody that we think has it all together and wouldn't have to, you know, do anything. Actors, actresses, our politicians, our, you know, like I said, our athletes, they're still getting help. They're, you know, because no one person, A, can do it all. And B, you continue to strengthen your strengths as well as shore up some of your weaknesses. And C, you get to be a blessing. Honestly, when there are so many people that I have met that want to help, but they don't know who to ask or how to help sometimes. And so just because you can do something doesn't mean you always should do it. And maybe if you acknowledge, okay, yeah, I can do this, but you know what? This person standing right next to me wants to help me. So I'm going to bless both of us and have them ask them to do it. Mm-hmm. So again, just a little bit of a different mindset of thinking about it might help. And I say these things to myself as well. I'm not, because I am definitely, I mean, my mom and my daughter were on this call, so I am definitely, and they will tell you, you're not going to tell me I can't do something. I'll darn well do it, and then I'll do it twice as good as you expected it to be done. So yeah, it's an area that I have to work on as well.
Yeah, I think it's I think it's what we've been taught a lot of times through society. The message of, why are you smiling?
Alex says, Fran, did you hear that?
Yes, I did. And actually, I think we're going to have to close this up pretty soon.
Okay. Yep.
So, but I don't want anyone to feel like they're alone. So somehow we have to try to
figure out a way to help people not feel so alone, but I'm not really sure, you know, other than knocking on people's doors.
Right. And we have to break those barriers down somehow, I guess.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It does. Yep. And I think, it's not that I think, I hope that us doing this and what I do with hashtag no limits is doing that to a degree. I mean, I know I'm still not going to reach every person who feels alone, or, reach every person who doesn't understand or has that closed-minded perspective. But if we can help one person, I would love to say if we could help one person every time we do this. I'm not sure if that's too lofty of a goal, but I even to have a little bit of encouragement. If people leave this with, every time we do this with just a little bit of encouragement and a little bit of a different, I hadn't thought about it that way. And that could be you and I feeling that way. It doesn't have to be the people watching.
Yeah, I feel like sometimes these are just us, you and me, hashing out how to get through life. Well, it is.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, I definitely think that it's, I was just sitting here thinking these are kind of like counseling sessions, where she listens to me and helps me, and I listen to her and help her. And the rest of you are just along for the ride.
Probably with the chipmunks that run through and the random thought processes, and
Yeah, well, I have to tell you, and I'm not going to say who asked me this question, but somebody asked me what you and I do before the show, because we're always so happy and giddy and silly. And they were like, are you drunk before you get on there?
No.
I said, no, we just really enjoy each other's company, and we really have a good connection, and we can be very honest with each other, I think.
Brutally. No, but okay. I think the key to your and my relationship, and why we can do what we're doing right now, is that we can be real. We don't have to filter, and you don't have many relationships in life where you can be real and unfiltered. And I would like to say the reason that we come on laughing half the time, or we have joy, or we started with prayer, and then we want the best for each other, and we want the best for whomever's listening, and it's about spreading hope and truth for me. And so it fills me with encouragement and joy when I think on that.
Well, and
that
sounds beautiful, and it speaks to our passion for what we're doing, that we are meeting today from your mysterious location. We met last week while I was on the road. We try not to cancel this, because not only is it important to us, but we know that we have our loyal viewership, and we want to be here to interact with our loyal viewers as well.
Well, and just to encourage, and I just, because I always, it comes back to me at the end of each one of these we do, is I want to leave that hope, that because in this world there's so much despair, and it seems like you're at a dead end so many times, that I don't want anyone to ever feel like there is no hope.
Right. Yep. Absolutely. Yep. Are you ready to wrap up?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Alex, Violet, Mom. I don't think anybody else commented today, but I know there were others watching at times, because our viewer numbers went up a little higher than I think they have in quite some time. So if anybody is still watching and you haven't commented, thank you for joining us today. Like we said, we try to be here every Friday at 1 o'clock Central. If you don't watch live and you're watching it on the replay, then you can watch it anytime you want, anytime after 1 o'clock Central. So we will see you all next week. God bless you, and know, as Fran says, that you're not alone. We will be happy to listen to you. We may not be in your area to physically come to you, but we will try to come to you every week through this venue. Have a great one. Bye.
Bye.